Now, just behave. I'm doing the intro, not you. No, I know you like this film. I like it a lot too, and I'm going to do it. Okay? Get. Ugh. Can't get any good help these days, and when you get them, they want to take over the show. I'm kind of used to that. Smokey, he's sort of kind of edging in here. I think he wants to find me pushing up daisies sometimes so Cartoon Classics can come in here and take over. Well, we're not going to let that happen, at least tonight. Got a great movie for you. Now, often we talk about the year 1939. And the reason why we talk about it is it's a watershed of a great year. No kidding. That's the year of Gone with the Wind. That's the year that John Ford made 3 fantastic films. 3, count them. Stagecoach, Drums Along the Mohawk, and Young Mr. Lincoln, which happens to be a favorite of mine. You got Jean Renoir, who makes the old Rules of the Game in 1939. 1939, big year. Big year for Hollywood. Okay, now, the film we're watching tonight is a 1939 product. You're guessing, otherwise I'm sort of wasting time, which I do a lot anyway. Flying Deuces, Laurel and Hardy. Laurel and Hardy happens to be one of my favorite, probably is my favorite comedy team. They were able to make that transition from the silent era into sound brilliantly. Some comics had a little bit of problems with that. You take a Harold Lloyd, for instance, didn't really work as well as he might. Hey, a little murky here. But Laurel and Hardy, their voices fit them perfectly. Likewise, they worked well in short subjects, 2-reelers, and they worked well with feature-length films. This is a feature-length film. By 1939, Laurel and Hardy are working in the feature-length venue. Likewise, this is their break away from the Hal Roach studios. This is a remake, in a way, of a short called Beau Hunks that they made, and it's one of those, Foreign Legion type of films, where at the early part of this film, Laurel and Hardy are vacationing overseas, and Oliver falls in love, and he thinks he wants to get married with this Georgette, who's played by Gene Parker. Gene Parker was married to Robert Lowry. Now, we brought some of his films your way as well, like Queen of the Amazon. But anyway, he thinks he's gonna marry this woman, and as it turns out, of course, she had no idea that he had the interest in this kind of situation. So he's heartbroken when he Stan lets it out of the bag that they are meant to be wed. As typical, Laurel and Hardy, they are able to work with some of the darker subjects at the same time as milking it for all the humor it's worth. Oliver decides that he's going to drown himself, and he has somehow convinced Stan Laurel that he needs to kill himself as well, because once Oliver's gone, who's going to be around to tell him what to do? Stan buys into it, and of course they go down to the river, and they're going to, tie themselves to a big rock and throw it in and die. Great scene in there. Suicide sequence, or near suicide attempt. Now, they are convinced by some wandering guy who comes by that, hey, join the Foreign Legion and you'll forget about that woman. So they kind of change their minds, and I won't go into how the suicide comes out. You can bet it doesn't go through all the way, but one of the things about this film is the way death is dealt with. It's kind of interesting. So they join the Foreign Legion, and they are just totally misfits, obviously, to be in that outfit. And Ollie forgets Georgette, and they decide, hey, I forgot her. Now let's just leave. So they're just going to walk out on these guys. And of course, they forget that they signed a commitment, right? They signed a contract. We're in the Foreign Legion. We can't just walk out on it, right? Just like you guys. You can't, you come on with us, right? It's a contract. Got to be with us, for the duration. Now, I think you're going to love what you see with this for the duration. The film was directed by A. Edward Sutherland. He directed a few films that I really like. He directed The Invisible Woman. I like that film. He directed Murders at the Zoo. Just the title alone of that, really always like that. He directed Bing Crosby and W.C. Fields in Mississippi, and W.C. Fields again in International House. So in the 30s, he's making some very significant comic works. The film was written by a number of different guys. One of the guys that's important to think about, though, is Harry Langdon. Harry Langdon, one of the great silent comedians. He works on this. As a matter of fact, there's the first time we see Oliver and Hardy, we see them in a portrait. A guy on the street has drawn a picture of them. It is reported, Okay, that Harry Langdon is the one that drew that little that portrait of them. So that's something to look forward to seeing as well. The set design for this was done by none other than Rudolph Mattei. Rudolph Mattei, remember him? He was the sort of the cameraman for Carl Dreyer, okay, for like Vampire and things like that. So significant talent working on this film. One thing I really like about Laurel and Hardy films too is not only are they able to, one, make the feature-length duration work, that I like that they're able to use silence. Okay, and I think that's one of the reasons why they were able to make that transition from silent films to sound film real well, is that they realized they didn't have to talk all the time. That they could actually use many of the skits and the ideas that worked out of silence in their sound incarnations. Okay, and there's some great uses of that. For instance, in the opening, with them up in their hotel room, and their Stan keeps trying to wash his hands. I won't go into that too much, but it's a very funny scene where he's trying to wash his hands. A little bit of dialogue, but of sort of a minor variety. It's not gaggy, got dialogue, but it's very gaggy in what they are doing. Works really well. Another thing that I like about the Laurel and Hardy films is that, the Marx Brothers, they all had musical talents, Each one would break off at a certain point in the film, and they would play the harp or play the guitar or play the piano. Chico working, doing that business, okay. Laurel and Hardy, too. Oliver, or Babe, as sometimes he's called, had a great voice. And there's a scene where they're walking along looking at how do you get out of this outfit, and some people are sort of singing in the background, Shine on Harvest Moon, and Ollie just joins in and does a beautiful job of shine on Harvest Moon. And it also allows Stan, you gotta admit, Stan doesn't really always have the greatest voice in the world, but he does know how to shake a foot. Okay, and he does a nice soft shoe dance, and they dance together and things like that to the song Shine on Harvest Moon. Likewise, there's a great scene in here where they're going to be shot at sunrise, okay, and they're sitting in their cell, and Stan, I guess to kill time, strips his bed down and turns it into a harp, which is no doubt sort of a parody of or commentary on harpo Marx, right? And where he finds his harps all over the place, Stan finds one himself. It's the bed springs to this bed, and he plays this really nice little symphonic song on here while they're thinking about how to get out of, their fix. Another one of the standby characters who pops up near the end of this film, and almost a Laurel and Hardy film would not be complete without James Finlayson. He's that old curmudgeon-y Irishman, with the big mustache, the balding guy, who always gets mad and he does those great double burns, and can't figure things out. My favorite film with him in it and with Laurel and Hardy is Big Business. I love Big Business. If you ever have a chance to track down that silent masterpiece, Big Business, get it. Laurel and Hardy are selling Christmas trees in California in July, door to door, and it's a marvelous film, dealing with that whole escalation of violence that they're so well at doing. This film doesn't necessarily fall into that escalation business, but it certainly does hold together well. The flying Deuces bit really kind of refers to the end of the film where they do hop in a plane, because all the way through it I'm wondering, where's the heck is the flying stuff? Well, hold on, you'll get to it. Flying Deuces, 1939, don't mean to be palavering on here too long. You're going to love this film. This is really Laurel and Hardy working on all cylinders, and it's not going to happen that often from here on down the line after this. This is sort of like the last of the great Laurel and Hardy films. Roll 'em, Smokey.